turned down all media because he said he's there to watch Shedeur Sanders, and Isaiah Bond gets upfield and goes score. Absolutely amazing.
Coach Prime showed up to Brown's training camp today, and he did something nobody in that building expected. He didn't talk. Not to reporters, not to cameras, not to a single microphone. He sat in the bleachers, watched every rep, and walked out without saying a word to Brown's media. At the exact same practice, Shedeur Sanders threw a ball to Isaiah Bond that had everybody on that field stop and stare. One man went silent, one throw went viral, and by the time you're done watching this, you're going to understand why both of those things happened on the same day. Let's start with the part that's got people talking. Day 2 of Brown's training camp. Deion Sanders is in the building. According to 92.3 The Fan Cleveland, Coach Prime sat far up in the bleachers, away from everyone else, and he made it clear from the jump he was not there for the media. He turned down every single request. No sound bites, no quotes, nothing for the cameras. He was there for one reason only, to watch his son. Now, if you don't know Deion, that might sound strange. This is a man who has never had a problem talking. He's built half his career on being loud, being available, being everywhere the cameras are. So when he shows up to an NFL practice and goes quiet, people notice. And of course, the internet did what the internet does. Some people jumped straight to the worst case. Is he hiding something? Is there tension? Is this the start of a bigger story? Here's the thing though, sit with the actual context for a second before you run with a theory. This isn't the first time in his life Deion Sanders has walked into a building and kept his mouth shut on purpose. Anybody who's followed his coaching career knows exactly what this looks like. This is a man protecting a moment, not avoiding one. Think about what's actually happening around Shedeur right now. He's not just some late-round pick trying to make a roster. He's in the middle of a real, documented quarterback competition, the kind Field Yates has called one of the truest in the league. Every rep matters. Every word said publicly gets picked apart, spun, turned into a headline that has nothing to do with what's happening on the grass. Deion knows that better than almost anyone alive. So instead of adding to the noise, he removed himself from it completely. And that decision lines up with something else that happened at this same practice, something that, if the story was really about hiding bad news, makes zero sense, because what Shedeur did on the field today was not something you keep quiet about. It was the opposite. It was the kind of play that gets pulled, clipped, and shared 1,000 times over by tonight. So before you decide Coach Prime's silence was bizarre for the wrong reasons, let's actually go to the tape, because the tape tells a very different story than the panic.
Right here is Skelly period, basically install. As training camp goes on and on, they're going to continually add new plays, and that's what you see right there. You see Coach Prime in attendance, sitting far in the bleachers, turned down all media because he said he's there to watch Shedeur Sanders, not speak out to the media.
If Deion really had nothing good to say, why would he stick around for the whole practice instead of just leaving? Now let's talk about why this year feels completely different from last year, because it does, and the reporters on the ground are saying it out loud. Last season, under Kevin Stefanski, the relationship between the Browns organization and Deion Sanders was cold, distant. There wasn't a lot of welcoming energy toward Shedeur's father being around the building. This year, with Todd Monken running the show as head coach, that has flipped completely. According to the same 92.3 report, Monken sat down with Deion before practice even started. Not a forced photo op, an actual conversation about Shedeur as a competitor, about how to coach him, about giving Deion's presence the respect it deserves instead of treating his personality like a problem to be managed. That is a real shift, and it matters more than people give it credit for. Because remember the offseason story that got blown completely out of proportion? The whole "will Deion even call Todd Monken" narrative? People spent a full week turning that into a soap opera, and what actually happened today proves that story was nothing. It was noise dressed up as drama. Monken didn't avoid Deion. Deion, he welcomed him in. That context changes everything about how you should be reading Prime's silence today. This isn't a man standing outside a program that doesn't want him there. This is a man who was invited in, sat through the entire practice, and chose to let the tape speak instead of his mouth. There's a difference between someone who's shut out and someone who's simply chosen not to talk. Prime is the second one. And on the field, the substance backs that up too. Shedeur Sanders and Carson Green ran with the starters. Deshaun Watson and Dylan Gabriel ran with the second group. That's not a demotion story. That's not a controversy. That's exactly what the coaching staff told everybody was coming the night before. No surprises, no shakeup, just the plan playing out the way it was supposed to. So you've got a coaching staff that's more welcoming than last year, a father who's earned enough trust to sit in on practice, and a starter rep group that's going exactly as announced. None of that supports the idea that Prime's quiet was him hiding bad news. If anything, it's the opposite. He didn't need to say anything because the tape was about to do all the talking for him. And that tape includes one play in particular that's the real reason this video exists.
This Deion, will Todd Monken call him? Should Deion call Todd Monken? All that nonsense that was the offseason talk, was blown up into it. The things that any reasonable person wanted to hear were, can you give me insight on on Shedeur as a competitor and how to best coach him? And can you pay deference to Deion instead of being maybe a little leery of his big personality and all the things that come with Deion? That's exactly what Todd Monken did today.
Yes.
I just think it proves that all that story that you and I both shot down and so many people try to do a whole week's worth of stories on, it was all for naught.
Well, and so here's the other takeaway on this. It's the idea that not only did Deion feel comfortable and invited and welcomed to come and hang out and be a part of the practice the way that he is and have the conversation not only with Monken and Andrew Berry, from Monken and Andrew Berry's standpoint, it's much different than what we got with Stefanski last year. It just is. This is more welcoming. This is more, and again, you got to treat Deion different. And I know people are going to hear this and be like, well, does Deshaun's dad get an opportunity and a chance to? No, Deshaun's dad isn't Deion freaking Sanders, okay? Like, understand the moment for a second, please, and get the idea that, like, Deion matters in this conversation, and his insight and the bonding part of it can be a real thing. And so, I don't know, it was very welcoming relative to what it was last year.
Go back to that quote for a second. This is more welcoming than it was last year. Let that sit for a moment, because that's not a small thing to say about an NFL building. All right, here's the play everybody's been sending each other since last night. It comes out of a motion package. Todd Monken loves dressing these plays up, disguising what's coming with crossers and drags before he lets it loose. This one starts as what looks like a simple drag route. Then Isaiah Bond peels off on a dig route 15 yards down the field. Shedeur reads it, sets his feet, and puts it right on Bond in stride. That's the laser. That's the throw. And it doesn't stop there, because Isaiah Bond catches it in space, turns upfield, and just runs. Nobody touches him. He walks into the end zone. On tape, that's a touchdown, full stop. Here's the part that's actually fueling the frustration, though. The official QB tracker at camp did not count it. Because there was no whistle blown on the play before it, the tracker rules didn't log it as a score. So on paper, in the box score that gets passed around, that throw does not exist. But anybody who watched the actual film knows exactly what they saw. A 15-yard dig, perfectly placed, turned into a house call. This is the kind of moment that explains itself once you actually watch it, instead of just reading a stat line. Because stat lines lie by omission all the time. They can't capture timing. They can't capture the way a receiver's route stem sets up the defender for exactly the wrong step. They definitely can't capture a ball that arrives on a receiver's frame at full speed without him having to break stride even once. That's what separates a completion from a laser. And it's not the only rep from today that shows this. Earlier in the same session, Shedeur found tight end Jake Stahl on a drag-out of a 7-on-7 look. He connected with Denzel Boston on another sharp route later in practice. There was one quick hitch that Grant Delpit read and broke up, a genuinely good defensive rep that deserves credit too, because this isn't about pretending every single throw was perfect. It wasn't.
but the volume of clean, on-time, accurate throws across the session is exactly why one uncounted touchdown to Isaiah Bond turned into the moment everyone's talking about today. Now, go back to Coach Prime sitting quietly in those bleachers. He watched this exact rep happen live, in real time, from 20, 30 yards away. You think a father who spent his whole life being loud about his son's success just happened to stay silent minutes after watching that throw hit its target? Or is it more likely he already knew the tape was going to do the talking for him, better than any soundbite ever could?
And so we have a quick out right here to Isaiah Bond. Just move the sticks. This play right here, I definitely love. This is a motion play. They're going to run a drag route, and Isaiah Bond is going to come on a dig route, 15 yards. Shedeur Sanders hit him right there, and Isaiah Bond gets upfield and goes score. Absolutely amazing.
That throw right there is worth more to Shedeur's case than any press conference Coach Prime could have given today. Now, let's actually look at the numbers, because the panic crowd loves to leave this part out. On the official QB tracker for Day 2, Shedeur Sanders went 14 of 24. Deshaun Watson went 16 of 22. On raw completion percentage, Watson edges him out. If that's all you look at, sure, you can build a headline out of that. But watch what actually separates these two performances. Shedeur Sanders threw 0 interceptions on the day. Deshaun Watson threw 2 interceptions the day before and was, by the reporting on the ground, still working his way back to sharper decision-making. Protecting the football in a real quarterback competition is not a small detail. It's arguably the single most important number on that entire tracker sheet. A veteran with $230 million fully guaranteed still has to answer for turnovers just like anybody else in that quarterback room. And that's before you even bring the Isaiah Bond play back into it, the one the tracker refused to count. Add that touchdown back to the tape, factor in 0 picks, and the gap between these two performances looks a lot different than a simple stat line suggests. That's exactly why, even with a lower completion percentage on paper, the actual read on the ground still gave Shedeur the edge for the day. This is the bigger truth sitting underneath everything that happened today. Coach Prime didn't need to defend his son to Browns media because his son didn't need defending. The tape did that job on its own. A clean pocket read into a 15-yard strike, 0 turnovers in a true competition, starter reps that matched exactly what the coaching staff already promised the night before. None of that requires a press conference to explain. It explains itself. So, when you put it all together, here's what today actually was. Not a coach hiding from cameras because something's wrong. A father watching his son take another step in a competition that's genuinely still open, choosing to let a 15-yard laser and a spotless turnover sheet speak louder than anything he could have said standing in front of a microphone. That's not bizarre. That's a man who understands exactly what wins this thing in the end. The tape, not the talking.
QB tracker, we see Shedeur Sanders was 14 of 24, missing 10 passes. Deshaun Watson was 16 of 22, missing 6 passes. Then you have Dylan Gabriel, 10 of 11, and obviously Green at the bottom, 6 of 8. So for the most part, we see Deshaun Watson seemed to have had the better day, or minor better day, than Shedeur Sanders, but I'm still going to give Shedeur Sanders the edge because he simply protected the football, no interceptions.
Completion percentage tells you part of the story. 0 interceptions in a real competition tells you the rest. Let's bring this all back together. Coach Prime showed up to Day 2 of Browns training camp and turned down every single media request in front of him. On the surface, in a vacuum, that can look like something's wrong, but nothing about the actual practice supports that read. Todd Monken sat down with Deion before the session even started. A real conversation about coaching Shedeur, a level of welcome this program didn't offer a year ago. Shedeur ran with the starters exactly as announced, and on the field he delivered the single most talked about throw of the entire day, a 15-yard laser to Isaiah Bond that the tape counted as a touchdown, even if the official tracker didn't. Add in 0 interceptions against a veteran who threw 2 the day before, and you start to see why Deion didn't feel the need to say a word. Some silence comes from fear. This silence came from confidence, from a father who watched exactly what he came to watch, and knew the film would carry the story further than any quote ever could. That's the real headline sitting underneath today's practice. Not a rejection, a statement, just delivered without a single word spoken to a single camera. So here's the real question heading into day 3. Was Coach Prime's silence today about protecting Shedeur from a media circus that's already tried to turn nothing into a storyline all offseason? Or is there something bigger coming that he's simply not ready to say out loud yet? Because either way, one thing is clear. The tape from today did more for Shedeur Sanders than any press conference possibly could have. A clean pocket, a perfectly placed dig route, a touchdown the tracker won't count, but everybody who watched it will remember. Drop your take down in the comments right now. Do you think Prime's silence was about protecting the moment, or do you think there's more to this story that's coming? Smash like and subscribe so you don't miss day 3 when we find out.